Hide that inside somewhere.
Stick it on here. Good afternoon, everybody. Kia ora mai tātou. It's good to see so many people here. Those people that are looking for a seat, if you're intending to leave at any time during the presentation, there's some seats still at the back somewhere. If you're intending to stay, there's plenty of seats at the front. So what I intend to do in this session is to give you a bit of an update about how we got on last year, how we met our goals or not, and then what's happening this year going forward. And just before we get started on that, I'd like to point to the people that might have a badge like this on. There's a few around. And those people have completed the staff engagement survey online. And they've got a badge that says, I've had my say. If you haven't had your say, get online and we find it on, I should get this right, on, you found it in your email inbox. The reason why I don't know is because as the employer of the university, I'm not asked to have my say. So I'm just wearing this badge as a sort of, just to sort of point to so you can recognize it on other people. But you've got an email in your inbox about the Staff Engagement Survey 2016, and this is an opportunity to give your view on how the university is working, how it's working for you, where it might be better, where it's doing really well. So do have a look at that and fill in. It doesn't take all that long, about 10 minutes, and you will have completed it and contributed to our thinking about where we have to go, what we have to do, what we should keep, what we should get rid of. So 2015 was a very good year for AUT, and to answer the question, how did we do in 2015? We did very well, and that is the result of work that you and your colleagues have put your time and energy and talents to. A lot of this is recorded in the AUT Annual Report for 2015, and that's now been audited. It's been approved by our council just on Monday, and so it is now being published, and you'll be able to find it online at AUTI. And I would encourage you to have a look at it, because it's got some great stories about what people are doing in the university, as well as the sort of financial facts and figures and all of that sort of thing. I'll just give you some highlights from the annual report. First of all, we met our overall enrolment targets, which means that we had nearly 20,000 equivalent full-time students and nearly 29,000 individual students. And we think that we stayed the second biggest university in New Zealand, ahead of Massey and ahead of Otago, and of course behind Auckland, that has about 32,000 equivalent full-time students. Just before going on to that, we believe, because we were told this by the Tertiary Education Commission, that we were the only university that met our SAC, or government-funded enrolment target, for last year. So no other university met that target, and ours involved some growth. Some of the other targets didn't. So we did well at attracting students. We did well at providing programs and courses that students were interested in, and we are doing well as a university in the market for students in New Zealand. Also internationally, we grew, and our international student numbers reached 16% of the total. Postgraduate EFTS were the biggest area where we grew, and that grew by about 20% on the previous year and reached 16% of the total EFTS for the university. And if you want a comparison of how that stacks up with other universities, 16% postgraduate is what Otago University has. So we're sort of matching Otago University with that proportion of postgrad. South Campus EFTS exceeded 1,300. It depends how you count them, and we've got a bit of an argument going on with the Tertiary Education Commission about how we should count these EFTS. But that was 25% growth on the previous year, and nearly met the target it came to within 98% of what we were meant to achieve there. And we had 787 doctoral students, which is a good number by any university standard, and way more than we had 10 years ago, which was around about 80. So that's a 10 times increase over that period. And we still retained a number of pre-degree programs, and we have a good number of students in those, in our certificate and diploma programs, which provide a range of opportunities and also some skills for particular industries. We'd be the university that has the most pre-degree students, and it's about 8 to 9% of our total enrolment. The next university with pre-degree at that level, if you don't count Lincoln, which merged with the Polytechnic 3 years ago, but forgetting them, Massey has about 5 to 6% pre-degree, so we're ahead of that. We met our financial targets. We earned that much money, which is quite a lot, and we spent less than that, but it's also quite a lot. Money's not very important, but if you don't have any money or you run out of money, then you can't do the things that are important. And so we need to manage our finances carefully, and we need to keep on spending less than we're earning. We had a surplus of 4% of our total income, and that's within the range that we're required to have by the Tertiary Education Commission and the Ministry of Education. Every tertiary institution is meant to have a surplus of 3 to 5%. Now, we call it a surplus. It's not really money that we don't use. It just goes into spending on capital items, which aren't part of our recurrent operating expenses each year. So we would spend that on library resources, on buildings, on major repairs and maintenance, on equipment, all of that sort of thing. So it's not a surplus that we can sort of fritter away. We don't spend it on the Christmas party. We do spend on the Christmas party, but less than that. And our debt increased to just over 100 million. Now that sounds bad, but it's good because we're getting the bank to invest with us in a bigger and a better and a stronger contributing future. The reason why it's gone up to 100 million rather than our plan for it to get to 60 million is we had the opportunity to buy 2 strategic properties. So we bought the WO building, which many of you will work in. It's the major administrative accommodation that we have in the university. And by buying that building rather than renting it, we save ourselves about 10 million over 10 years. And so that's a good deal. But it does mean that we had to outlay the price of the building up front. So that pushed our debt up. And the other thing that pushed our debt up was buying the land next to the South Campus, which became available. And so we've been able to incorporate that into our campus and use it for ancillary facilities to our teaching. And so if you go to the South Campus now, you'll see a big car park on there that students are using to put their cars on, because the car park we used to have has been taken up by the new building there. More about that later. We have to manage our finances according to some external requirements. Our regulators put requirements on us. Our bank puts requirements on us. They say, if you're going to borrow money off us, we want to see that you're managing well and that your financial performance is strong. And so there are all sorts of ratios that we have to meet for people in Wellington and for our bankers. And we met all of them, so that's good. Now that's due to very sound central financial management by Lyle Williams, our CFO, and his team, but it's also due to everybody that works with a budget in the university, managing that budget well. It's also due to all of those people that work on us bringing income into the university with students and in other ways doing their job well. So managing our finance is something that we're all contributing to in some way, and so we can be really pleased that we have done well on all the indicators we have to. We got good feedback from students. They were pleased with the quality of teaching. They were pleased with student life, although there was some indication that we could do better with that. And they did well in employment. And 88% said that they would recommend AUT. And that's great. So 88% of our 27,000 some students would recommend AUT to other people. Now, of course, there is another side to that. 12% wouldn't. And if you think about that 12%, that's around about, well over 2,000 students, 2,000 to 3,000 students that have come to AUT that wouldn't recommend it to others. So we need to think about, what does that mean? Why is that? What can we do about that to make the experience of learning at AUT much better, much more satisfying, much more successful for that 12% of students that currently aren't saying we're a place you should go to. We made good progress with research. We got some great awards during the year. We got the McDiamond Award. Valerie Fagan was awarded that, which is for outstanding research that has the potential to deliver human benefit. And that was for the stroke riskometer. We got the Innovator of the Year award. Code Biotech and Steve Henry got that award for work related to biological molecule development that has the potential in cancer cures. We got the Supreme Design Award for the Health and Wellbeing Design Lab, which we put together at Auckland Hospital in collaboration with ADHB. And we got the top award for sports biomechanics. I say we, but of course all of those awards were due to the work that individuals, students and others did, but that went to Patria Hume. We also got some good grants and deals, and just some examples. We got our first full Marsden grant, and that is a very competitive fund to get anything from. It has an, the sort of the ratio of application to success is about 1 in 20. So we did well to get anything there. We've got some big competitors there. We got an MBIE special purpose grant for $2.4 million. We got a KiwiNet Health Innovation Hub grant for $180,000. That's for the development of a product. And we got a license deal, not for spelling, but for a GPTU device which allows, it's a cell phone device with software that allows remote diagnosis of skin lesions. So if you're nowhere near a doctor, somebody who's got this phone can push it up to wherever the patch on your skin is, and a doctor, someone else, can diagnose the skin lesion. Actually, all of those things were about health, and all of the awards were about health in some way. And so we're doing really well, whether it's from engineering. This award here, the license, was for a group from engineering. The KiwiNet grant was for another group from engineering. These others were from health. So whether we're in engineering, IT, health, whatever, design, a lot of our work is improving health and medical potential for the world. And it was good to hear Sir Jerry Mataparai on the radio the other day. He spent some of his last time as the Governor-General going around all the universities looking at exciting research. And so all the universities were asked to give some presentations to him on their research. And so he came to visit AUT, and one of the things that he heard about was the stroke riskometer, which the McDiamond Award was for. And on the radio, he was interviewed about this on Morning Report on RNZ. And the first thing that he spoke of that had excited him was the stroke riskometer, which he said had the potential to change health in the world. And he thought it was great that research groups in New Zealand were developing things like that. Unfortunately, when he was asked where he saw it, he said, "Oh, that was up in Auckland." Now, that was right geographically, but in the university world, it's a bit ambiguous. But anyway, he was impressed by it. We got a 16% increase in our research income, which is good, but that's still low. We have about $11 million of income, or we had that last year, for research from external sources. Compared with the other universities, that's not much, but we're doing a lot with it. And we had a 20% increase in our quality assured outputs, which exceeded our goal for the year. And thank you to all of those who made sure that you got your research outputs into the system. I suspect that in previous years we might have had more research outputs than we thought because they didn't go into the system. So thank you everybody who's an academic and got that work recorded so that we could put it in our report. We did have a disappointing result. The percentage of staff who are engaged in research, who are research active, who had one research output during the year went down. It was 59% in 2014. It went down to 57% in the last year, 2015. Now, actually, the number of active researchers in the university went up slightly by about 7 because our staff numbers went up. But that percentage going down is in the wrong direction. And we need to, as a university working in higher education, delivering advanced level work to students, we need to be sure that our teaching academics are qualified, expert, and current in their fields. And that probably means doing research. And so that needs to be pushed up. And this is something that, in a moment, we'll see was also referred to in the academic audit that we had recently. So the academic audit, you'll recall the auditors came to AUT in November last year, a team put together by the Academic Quality Assurance Agency in Wellington that audits all the universities. And they are in the process of doing a round of audits, which they call Cycle 5, and they're looking at teaching, learning, and student support at all the universities. So that's what the audit was about. And they commended us for the use of data that we have. A lot of our work is informed by good data, and we use that data to make improvements. They commended us on our student support arrangements. They commended us on the design of our learning spaces. They commended us on program approval processes that we use here, on our work integrated learning, that's co-op and practicums and that sort of thing. They commended us on academic integrity approaches that we have at AUT. They commended us on having an inclusive and safe environment for all of our staff and students, and for the postgraduate processes and support systems that we have, not just for students, but also for supervisors. Most of all, they commended us for having a student-centred ethos. Now, Professor Rob Allen, who knows a lot about audits, has noted that in the wording that they used, they were kind of saying to us, we know that everybody in a university will tell us that they're student-centred. But the way that they worded it in the report that we've received indicates that they thought that we really were. We were genuine about being student-centred. We weren't just talking about it. We were walking the talk. So again, that's something that is pervasive across all the university. They met with all sorts of people, students, staff, academic staff, administrative staff, council members, people from outside, who must have all put that message forward. So that's great. And they commended us on the initiative of the South Campus. So well done, everyone. They had some recommendations, and these were the things that they thought we could do better on or we should give attention to. And the first one was that we needed to coordinate and expand our professional development for teaching. So we do some very good work in this area. There's some good programs and opportunities available, but they're not widely distributed, they're not widely picked up, and they're not well coordinated. So we need to do better with that, and so this is something that people are thinking about. Professor Parikeha, as PVC Teaching and Learning, is looking at how we might do better in that regard and expand some of the very good things that we've got going on. And they also noted that we need to give attention to ensuring that our research activity covers the whole range of the learning curriculum at AUT so that students are all taught by researchers. Now, I've mentioned that we need to ensure that our students at a high level have a teacher that is qualified, current, and expert in their field. They also need to be qualified, current, and expert in teaching that field. So that's a good thing to have. That's logical. That makes sense. It's also a legislative requirement. In New Zealand, the law requires that a university teaches its students by people who are actively involved in advancing knowledge. That's the wording from the Act, actively involved in advancing knowledge. So that's something that we're meant to be doing, and that's why it's mentioned in that audit. So our 57% of academic staff who are research active doesn't quite cut it, and that's something we need to focus on this year. So there's some challenges for 2016 and beyond. They did recommend that we looked at some other things like business continuity and risk management and those sort of things, which are important, but I won't go through those now. Last year there were some world ranking assessments done. This is something that seems to be on the rise. It's not just, you know, are you the best university or the 800th best university? It now goes to subjects and types of work that you do. And I don't suppose anybody in a university anywhere thinks that these things are actually very robust or really mean anything. But unfortunately, when they get out there, everybody's going to use them. And something was, John Marsland, our Chancellor, who's a graduate of Cambridge University, got some material in the mail the other day informing him with great joy that Cambridge was now the 3rd best university in the world. Now, if Cambridge has to do this, there's something seriously amiss in my mind. But there's certainly a trend going on. And AUT is not exempt from that. And we are participating, whether we like it or not, in these world rankings. There is a good side to it, though. It does get the AUT name out there. So the more that we're on a list, the more that we appear in those rankings, the more people know about us. And that's good for recruiting academics. It's good for recruiting students internationally. It's good for forming partnerships and getting contracts and that sort of thing. Some governments look at these things and will only give PhD students their scholarships to study abroad if they're going to a university that's ranked in a certain range in some of the rankings. So anyway, the new ones that came out at the end of last year and were publicised at the beginning of this year were the QS subject rankings. And the QS ranking agency looked at 4,500 approximately universities, and then they scored particular disciplines in some of those universities that they thought were worthy of it, and then they ranked the scored subjects so that the top ranked ones were designated world ranked subjects in those universities. We were world ranked in 5 subjects: art and design, accounting and finance, communication and media studies, computer science and information systems, and education. Those names are their designations. So it's not about our schools so much, it's about the work that we do across those things, whichever school they're done in. So that's great. Some of those areas are our big areas, and it's great to be up there in 5 disciplines. We used to be ranked in 3, and now we've got 5. So we're moving ahead in that. The other big thing that came out at the end of last year was the Times Higher Education rankings for International Outlook. And they, in their press release, pointed out that any university that wants to be prestigious and outstanding has to have an international outlook in the world today. And so that's why they separated that out. That's one of the criteria they look at when ranking an overall university, or ranking the universities overall. And we became the 12th best university in the world for international outlook. Now you might wonder, where does that come from? How do they get that? So they look at the percentage of international students we have. They look at the percentage of international academic staff that we have, and they look at the percentage of our research outputs that are published with an international co-author. And so putting all of those things together, AUT came out 12th in the world. And not only that, but we came out first in New Zealand and first in Australia. And that's quite something, because most people in the university world think of Australia as the standout leader in international work. So they have more international students per head of population than any other country, and they are out there in the world from some of their biggest and best universities right through to their newest and developing universities. So it's great to have that. We also were reconfirmed as being in the top 500, or the top 3% of universities in the world. And the 80 refers to our placing in the universities that are under 50 years old. So we were 80th in that group. And, you know, go back 50 years, that's a long time ago. There's lots of universities in the world that are under 50, so AUT is doing really well. There's also an informal ranking of universities that are under 25 years old, so we're getting down to a smaller and smaller number. And I think we were about number 7 in that, which, again, is pretty good. So as a new university, we've got some evidence that we are moving ahead in the right directions and in a way that's being recognised internationally. So what about this year? We start off the year with no students. Many of you would have been working here, wandering around the buildings. They would have looked like cathedrals, lots of seats, but there's nobody in them. And sort of an echoey place. Quite nice, calm, quiet, no interruptions, except for the odd colleague, maybe. And then the students arrived. Our applicant numbers went up. Our conversion rate for domestic students went up. That's people that apply and end up enrolling. And so that went up to around about 40%, which is good. There's all sorts of reasons why an applicant might not enrol. One of them might be that we don't accept them. So they don't have the right qualifications, or we don't have enough places in that particular program. Others are that they decide to go somewhere else, or they lose interest in going to university at all. Our new EFTS went up, and this is important for pipeline for the future. So if we've got lots of new students, then we'll have more students in second year and third year, and possibly in postgraduate. Our domestic students went up, our international students went up. These are the ones that are enrolled. Maori EFTS, Pacific EFTS went up. And our postgraduate EFTS went up again by the biggest number, 15%. Or sorry, not the biggest number, the biggest proportion. We're forecast to reach 103% of our budget for enrolments. And at the South Campus, where there's a lot of interest in Wellington about how things are going, and remember, we get special funding that is available to no other university for our South Campus. And in fact, there isn't much funding available for new EFTS anywhere in the system except for the South Campus or a few STEM subjects. So what we're doing there is really important, and we've now got 89% of our annual budget. That's further ahead than we were last year. And part of the reason for that is our uni prep program there, and that doubled its numbers this year, getting up to 250 or so. So that's all good. The international conversion rate went down. That means the number of applicants that actually enrolled went down. Now, it might not matter all that much because the number of international students went up, but we need to have a look at why that is, and can we do better on that. Our returning EFTS went down. So these are the students coming into second and third year, and that's probably because of the university entrance dip that we had that is now coming through as a trough coming through our enrolments. That will be followed by the peak of new students that we have this year. So there'll be a bit of an upset in the numbers in second and third year over the next few years. 10 schools increased their enrolments, but 7 schools decreased, but only by a little. So there was a sort of a steady state, I guess you could say, with a slight decrease in some of the schools. So this 146 countries here is an interesting little factoid that you might like to drop into conversations at parties and barbecues. Our students this year were born in 146 countries. So that's pretty international. I don't know how many countries have to vote for Helen Clark to become the Secretary General of the United Nations. But so that's an outstanding result. It does indicate how important it is that we give attention to being an inclusive and safe community. And that was something that was remarked on by the academic audit people, that they felt that we were that. But we can't take our eye off the ball there. So we need to be inclusive and safe. And of course, not just for people from different nationalities and ethnic groups, but our rainbow community, and we've been reconfirmed with our rainbow tick this year, people of different faiths and beliefs, all sorts of areas of diversity, and then of course people with disabilities. And we do a lot of work with groups like Be Accessible, who are working with the university in making the university more accessible, not just in its physical environments, but in access to the educational and employment opportunities that we provide. And we're also doing research with them, or exploring setting up a research group around accessibility. So we have now lots of students. If you look out the window, the cathedral is full. And that lots of students emphasises our purpose, that we are here to do work in advanced education, and that's about students. So whatever we do, wherever we work in the university, whatever our profession is, whatever our responsibilities are, what division we work in, we all have one overriding goal and purpose, and that is to make the experience of learning for our students exceptional, and to allow students to become graduates that are outstanding in the world. That is why we do whatever we do. And if you think about teaching, well, that's obvious. That's directly student engaged. If you think about research, it's not quite so obvious, but research does inform our teaching. It does inspire the staff who inspire the students. It does keep us expert and current in the areas that we say we can deliver education to students in. If you think about administration, it's less obvious, but we need to think about, we have a lot of administrative processes here, and they're all necessary, but the way that we do them might not be necessary. So we've got to think about, does our administration make the experience of being a student better, or more frustrating, more annoying, more difficult to get through? Could we change that? The same thing for our administration for the staff members, for all of us. Is our administration the sort of thing that makes it easy to do a good job, that makes it easy to spend our time on the right things, or does it make it harder? And so we need to be thinking, if we're in an administrative area, how can we simplify this? Or how can we get rid of this process altogether? How could we do it a different way so that people don't need to spend time on it? How could we make it more obvious, more accessible, more user-friendly? So all of that goes to making the student experience great, because of course the student experience won't be great if the staff experience isn't. Our facilities, again, that's obvious. We were commended on the design of our facilities, and I know that our estates team and others are working hard to make sure that the new builds that we have, as well as the modifications of existing buildings, make a better place for the way that students learn and work today. And also make it a better place for students and staff to engage with one another, and staff to engage with one another, so that they're more collaborative, more social, more attractive places to be. Communications. We at the senior leadership team ran a series of workshops where we looked at big themes in the university. One of them was, what's the student experience? So the facilitator of the workshops, without telling any of us, arranged for about 20 students to come along to participate in the workshops with us. And at my table, the students said that one of the things that they would like is that they would like the profile of the university that we generate to be more academic, to be more expert. And that's because, of course, their own personal brand, if you want to talk in marketing communication terms, is attached to our brand and profile, and they want to be proud of where they came from. so that people not only think that that university is good, but that they're good because they studied there and they graduated and got a degree from there. So our communications affect our students. And not only do they attract our students, but they live with our students as they graduate and are alumni and go through their working lives. International might be obvious. We need to think about why do we have international work? Is it just to get money? That's helpful. But how does it make the student experience and the experience of all of our graduates, domestic and international, better? And if I've mentioned staff, that all of us in a way work with staff. We all have colleagues, we all communicate in our staff networks in different ways in our teams. Some of us will be leading teams. Some of us will be developing things that affect all of the staff in the university. Some of us and people in organisation work on staff issues all the time. But unless this is a great place to work, it will never be a great university. And I think we've got the seeds of greatness within us, and we need to make sure that we don't suppress that growth by neglecting how it's like to work here as a staff member. So whatever area we're in, the big question is how do we make that arrow that connects the work we do to students and graduates stronger, more effective, more impactful from any area in the university? And that's a question that we should be thinking about throughout the year. There's no easy answer to that, but it's something that should be always on our minds. It's a big year for campus development. This is where we're heading with the South Campus. Those of you who go to South Campus every now and then will already be able to see, if you look through the holes in the hoardings around the building site, this building going up. You can see the shape of it now. The steel is up, the foundations are in, and that's due to be completed in 2017. As I said before, unfortunately, it's sitting on some of the car park, and this lovely new green space here is the rest of the car park that we used to have, that green space in there. And so we needed to replace the car park, and fortunately the land next door came available, and so we now have a new car park in here. I was there yesterday. It was already packed with cars. It holds about 400 cars, and that's an indication of the number of people that go to that campus and the integration of the campus with the university, because I guess there'll be some people coming and going using that car park. At the city, we have the engineering, technology and design precinct going up, or coming down actually, because it's in demolition. And unfortunately, it's a bit noisy, and it's still going to be a bit noisy for a little bit longer. It should be finished in about 5 to 6 weeks, the demolition part. And the demolition is removing WL building, which is mainly a car park, but also had some work areas in it, and those people have been relocated to mainly WU building. The labelled buildings, WE, WD, WM, WS, WW and WL, are all what we call the Engineering, Technology and Design Precinct. And so the new building is going to be a core for that precinct and deliver a lot of space for research, learning and innovation, but also a lot of space for people to gather together and work in a social collaborative way as well. So the new building is the blue building, which will still be called WL. It's not a very interesting name. We might ask Enrico, the head of school, for it to come up with a better one. It will incorporate some of WS and be linked to it. And this shows that it have entrances on both St. Paul Street and Simon Street. So you'll be able to get to it through a cafe entrance and a lobby way on Simon Street, or through the main entrance on St. Paul Street. And the building will look like this. The purple bit is a 12-storey tower block. The brown bit is the bit that faces out onto Simon Street, and that will be 3 stories. And the brown bit at the back, the extension arm at the back of the yellow building is the current Science and Technology building. The extension at the back will be part of the new building as well. So it's a very big facility, and it's going to look like this. I put all those arrows on there because, unfortunately, this artist's impression gives prominence to 2 apartment buildings that have got nothing to do with it. So the arrows point to the building bits that we're actually going to occupy. And so you can see there's a bit that's on St. Paul Street, the brown bit is on Simon Street, and there's a white bit there that's got an AUT written on it, which is part of the 12-story building. It's a very big building. We expect to be finished and ready for occupation in 2018. At the North Shore, there is a new building planned, and it's in the design phase still, design and consultation. And those who know the North Shore campus will be able to see that it connects 3 buildings that are already there, the library, the AF building and the AG building, the administration building, and unfortunately in fairly faint letters, it indicates that it's going to sit on what we now have as the AD building, which is the health clinics, the interprofessional health clinics that the public can use. And so they're going to be relocated at a new facility further down Akaranga Drive, which is more accessible to the public, and that will make room for the new building. So the demolition of AD will happen towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year. And we are still in planning stages, as I said. This is what we think the inside of the building might look like, and that will be completed sometime in 2019. It might be the beginning, it might be a bit later than that. But work is progressing rapidly through the design phases to get to the contracting phase. So it's also a big year for thinking together because we have a strategic plan, and the strategic plan that we currently have runs out at the end of this year. Now, some of you might not be big fans of strategic plans, and that's fine. They sometimes seem a bit limiting, but they do give us a bit of a sense of where we think we're going and how we can work together to get there. And our strategic plan had a number of goals in it. Many of them we've already met. One of them was how many PhD students we'd have by the end of this year, and that was 750. By the end of last year, we had 787. So we've already met that one. And there's many others that we've already met. So it's getting a bit old now. And so this year, we're going to come together in various groups and ways. And some of the consultation has already started on that with the Let's Talk program. And we hope to come up with a document which will be a document about where we're heading, our purposes, our directions, and that will be ready for implementation next year. We're at a point of change in our life cycle, and I think some of the statistics that we've seen indicate that our desire to reach up to be a university is now something that we don't have to focus on so much. There is no doubt that we operate as a university, we operate as a dynamic, comprehensive, strong university, research active, outward looking. We're still young, we still have enormous potential. And so we've got to think about what do we do with that now? Where do we go with that now? And some of our thinking might be shaped around where's the world going? And we know that the world is changing rapidly, globalization, uncertainty about what work will be in the future. And we've recently had conferences here. We have a work research institute that looks at those things. Artificial intelligence and automation and robotics will change the work that's available. We can't predict what sort of work will be out there 5 years out when the current batch of students that we have just taken on will go out into the workforce. So we have to think, well, what do we do about that? How do we make university education valuable in that kind of context in the changing world, as we like to say? So this is a year of strategic thinking, thinking about who we are and what our purpose is and what we can do with that that's going to make a strong contribution. Now, we want to make a strong contribution for all sorts of reasons. One of them is that that's the moral thing to do. A lot of people spend a lot of money making universities work, and we've got to do work that adds value back to those people. The second reason why we want to be a university that makes a contribution is that's the kind of university that people will come to. That's the kind of university that people will want to work in. That's the kind of university that will have a strong profile because it's connecting to things that need to be done. It's connecting to things that need to happen. And I like to think of the work of education with a phrase that Jean Piaget, an educational philosopher of the early part of last century, used. And he said the purpose of education, and he worked mainly in early years education, but the purpose of education is to create men and women who can do new things. And I think there couldn't be anything more apt for any educational institution to think about at this time in this world than creating men and women who can do new things. And that will be our mission and challenge as we go forward with a huge amount of confidence, capability, strength, expertise that is constantly building at this university due to the work that you all do. So we come back to, oh yes, strategic thinking, taking action. You know, thinking is good, but doing something is even better. So we need to think and do, and we need to start that straight away. So coming back to the point of what we do, students, graduates who can go out and do new things, and we all contribute to that. We all contribute in some way to making that job better, making it easier, making it more inspiring, more enjoyable, and more successful. Thank you for coming to the presentation today. Thank you for the work that you do every day here at AUT and our community. Thank you very much. Some people suggested, and I don't know if we've got time, that there might be someone with a question. Questions are not compulsory, but they're not prohibited. If there is a question, I'd be happy to try and answer it, or many of my colleagues here may be better placed to answer it. If you've got to go, that's fine, but if you can stay and you want to engage with some questions, that's also fine. Does someone have a question? Yes, Rob.
Yeah, hi Derek. So we've got 21 students in the US right now doing internships, as you know. How important is it that we're placing students into internships either during their studies or immediately afterwards?
Well, I think that it's essential that 100% of our students have a work integrated or work placement learning experience during their course. And you might say, well, gee, that's hard. How are we going to do that with art? Or how are we going to do that with languages? Well, I think that's our challenge. How do we do that? But all of our students should have the opportunity and the experience of not just acquiring knowledge, not just experiencing the advancement of knowledge, which is research, but seeing the application of that knowledge in real situations, so that when they go out from the university, they're equipped to deal with all those 3 A's: acquisition, advancement, and application of knowledge. And we need a world where people apply what they know to what they can see, and getting experience of that early is really important. It's also great for their employment prospects. And while I don't agree with the notion that a university is an employee mill, I think it's hard to find a student that doesn't come here hoping that it's going to improve their chances of getting employment, either by taking a job that somebody else has got or making one in a new enterprise. The students that you mentioned who are going overseas, I think that's another important aspect of the work that we do, and that's one program that we've got where students can go overseas and get an experience, a global or international experience of work, practice, business in another environment. And that's got to be something that we also seek to spread across as an opportunity that all our students have. So I'd like to see a goal of 100% of our students being offered some sort of international experience during their bachelor's program and beyond. Don't know if that answers your question, but yes.
Are we still officially or unofficially AUT University or AUT?
We're unofficially AUT University for people that haven't caught up with the fact that we're AUT or the Auckland University of Technology. So we have officially dropped AUT University. A lot of people in the media haven't quite caught up with that, but I was listening this morning to Radio New Zealand, and there was an expert talking about Helen Clark's chances of being appointed as the Secretary General of the United Nations, and it was an international law expert from AUT, and I was thrilled as I was taking my shower to hear the announcer, I can't remember which one it was, saying that she was from Auckland University of Technology. That was great. So we're not AUT University. Please don't use that anymore. Yes, Valerie.
I think the achievement of the university is simply outstanding, especially in the area of international outlook. Yeah. I think the achievement of the university is really outstanding, especially in the area of international outlook. And I think we should capitalize on that, because not many people outside the university know about that.
Yeah.
And attract some media attention to that fact. Is there any plans for that?
Yes, and in fact, we got some media attention from that in January. I don't know if you saw the Herald, but the headline was AUT outstrips its more established colleagues or something. And it sort of made out that we were the best university in New Zealand. And then further down, it pointed out that it was for international outlook. So that was a nice piece of friendliness from the Herald, yeah. But you're right, we do need to make something of these things. And, you know, everybody has the opportunity of mentioning these things when you're talking to people, writing things. Maybe we should look at what some universities do of putting these things on our letterhead as little badges. One of the great things, if you look up the Times Higher Education World University Ranking Agency website and you come to AUT, we get a badge for being in the top 50 in something. And that's for International Outlook, so that's good. Probably nobody goes to that website, unfortunately, except people from other universities. Sorry? Yes, yeah, we could do that. We overlay it on this one. Yes, is there another question? Okay, well, thank you all again for coming, and have a good day and afternoon.